For more info on the topic, focus, and guest of the episode, please check the description below. Please enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Inky Thoughts podcast. It finally happened. After 2 years of doing the podcast, I have created a Halloween special in time for Halloween. And since I'm not very scary myself, this is the best I could do. I have invited along my own goth from my own home territory, so to speak. A great tattoo artist with a specialty in horror tattoos. Because what is better to talk about when it's Halloween than horror tattoos? And before I ramble on too much about this man, who is, of course, Danish like me, we love the darkness and all that, people think and all that stuff. Maybe, maybe not. But before I go on too far, Anders, would you please introduce yourself?
Um, my name is Anders Grucz, and I've been tattooing for 13 years, something like that, and decided to specialize in the field of like creating horror, dark art, doing all my work freehand. Uh, Always had interest in doing this kind of style since I started drawing as a kid. I was like more like a lot of into all the old horror movies as a kid. When we were about to have this podcast, I was thinking, okay, when did it actually start? And I remember as a kid, I never slept in my own bed. I always slept in the sofa because then I could watch we had one channel, and in the night they showed all the horror movies. So my dad was watching TV all night and sleeping on the couch, and I could watch X-Files and all the like horror movies that showed up in the night. So I think it started quite early. So when I started drawing, felt quite natural for me to go into that kind of field. And also when I started thinking about it, I realized that I always had this kind of macabre interest in death. And I think it's kind of like, I remember some of my favorite movies as a kid was Interview with a Vampire and Highlander. And I remember from Highlander, I always was thinking like, if I had one wish, I wish to be the guy from Highlander that could live forever, because I had this big fear of dying. And I think it's the same with the Interview with a Vampire, because they're like, yeah, they could live forever. And
I'll take the curse. As long as I live forever, I'll take the vampiric curse.
yeah, I think it's about the same time. I remember my grandmother died, and I remember so clearly walking down the hall and seeing her dead. And for me, it was so weird seeing her dead. And I think combined watching these movies, I had this like, damn, I'm gonna die. So I started to get this like really interesting in all the horror macabre, and one of the ways I started dealing with it was every time I was like alone home or even watching movies at night, I would like watch the creepiest horror movies, and then I grew up on a big farm in Jutland.
Oh,
So in the nighttime, I would watch this movie, and then I was like, brace myself, and then I would walk out, and I would walk down to the big fucked up scary forest we had. And I would walk down there in the middle of the night. I think I was like maybe 8, 9 years old. And I would walk down to this forest and just standing in the forest. And then when I feel comfortable enough, I would walk home. So I think I was kind of like this fear of dying and fear of all the dark. I kind of feel like I started to embrace it.
I mean, that is the most goth thing I ever heard, that you went out and became that scary kid in the forest that you saw in all the horror movies. Without even knowing it, you just went out there and became this kid. Like,
Yeah, and I started to like, yeah, kind of like embrace it and love it. And
yeah.
so yeah, when I became a teenager, all the like, of course, then metal came along. I started to listen to
Mm.
Rammstein and Clawfinger, and then Korn, Slipknot, and I started to combine all of this, like the darkness of the music and all the old horror movies,
Mm.
and I even remember meeting some kids from other schools when I was like teenager, and they were all like, "Yeah, we remember you as a kid. You were the guy with long hair and always wearing black clothes." And this was when I was like fucking 7, 8 years old, and the only thing I remember was I was always wearing black clothes and had like my hair down to here, and had weird colors and shit like that. So I think it's just like it was just a natural process since I was
Yeah.
a small kid actually.
But how did it, I mean, you went into it a little bit here that it sort of was always there, but we talked a bit before we started recording, and you mentioned briefly that you actually started out to doing other stuff at first when you were like starting out as an artist, but I imagine you always wanted to do the horror stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Because I did what other teenagers did. I got into booze and all these kind of things and went away from drawing a
Mm.
bit. But then I actually became an electrician because I had to
Oh,
do something. But in the middle of this education, I realized I fucking hated it. So I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? And I looked at down my books and I realized, okay, the only thing I'm doing when I'm studying, like as an electrician, I was sketching in my books. So I'm like, okay, maybe I should get back to my old dream. And when I was a kid, I always said like, I either wanted to be a zookeeper or draw for Disney. So I didn't become a zookeeper. So I'm like, okay, maybe I should get into like drawing again. So I went into the drawing academy. So I applied for that when I was done as an electrician, and then I came into the drawing academy, and that's really like classical drawing. You got like
yeah.
croquis and nude models every day. You sit there and draw. And I got so interested in all the classical drawing that later on I was like, okay, I'm gonna move away from Jutland, and then I moved to Copenhagen to study at the classical drawing school, which kind of led me to meeting an old animator that worked for Walt Disney and no, not Walt Disney, Warner Brothers,
Understood.
and he
Okay.
was like yeah, he worked on Space Jam and Help I'm a Fish and all of these. So he was like, yeah, I'm gonna build up this art school here in Copenhagen, and I need some students, and I ended up helping him getting the students and studied there with him for I think it was 3 years or something like that, where I was doing sculptures and all of this. So yeah, so I studied for I think this is like 6, 7 years drawing and art painting, and all of it was with classical drawing, animation,
Mm.
and all of this. So when I started tattooing and applied for an apprenticeship, everything I had to show was actually all the studies from the classical drawings. It was like models and there were sculptures and all of
I
this.
would imagine a lot of realism as well.
A lot of realism. And also to pay for my studies, I was like doing a portrait for people. I was drawing people's kids
All right.
and doing like wedding portraits and stuff like that because it was an easy way when I was not studying to pay for my bills. So I was like kind of working as a portrait artist. Yeah, so when I started my apprenticeship, I could feel they wanted another one in the studio to make realism because this is
Mm.
back in
It has
2013.
always been popular, especially back then, you know. There was,
Yes, exactly. So I kind of got into it and did it for many years, but I never really felt it.
yeah.
It was, yeah, I traveled around doing portraits, doing all of this at conventions, but I did it for a lot of years and only had like a few customers that wanted something different. So I started like doing like charcoal drawings to show my style. I remember some of the first ones. It was I was sitting at home. I was so tired of doing animal portraits and shit like that all the time. So I had like a weekend, and I had all my papers out,
You can only
and
do
from the best.
somebody's pet dog so many times before it gets boring,
Yeah,
right?
I've seen all of them. So I had all my papers on the table, and I put on like horror movies for a whole day. And I started sketching because I was really into drawing with charcoal back in my art school days. So I did all my sketches with charcoal, and then I was watching The Thing, if you ever seen that.
Jesus fuck, that
Yeah,
does explain so much about your style, to be honest, for anybody that's seen it, if that's where it originated.
it kind of was because I was doing all these sketches with charcoal, and then I looked at this like The Thing where they kind of morph into this creature, like where
Yeah.
they stretch out, and I was like, and I was sitting and sketching skulls, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that with my skulls. So I started like twist my skulls, making bones grow out of them and shit like that.
Yeah.
And then I had a lot, and then I brought them to the studio, and then the next couple of weeks, every time I had a customer coming in, I'm like, and they're like, yeah, what do you want to do? And I kind of showed them like, I really want to do this if you want to try something different.
Nice.
And a lot of them actually said yes because they thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
I
it
mean, it
kind of
worked
started.
because I mean, even when I first started hearing about you years ago, and I think we met at a convention many years ago
Mm,
as well, very briefly when you were early in your career. But you very quickly got very famous for like, oh, there's this dude that does this like eldritch horror, like
yeah.
incredible artwork that you can't really. it's macabre and you can't really tell what it is. I mean, you can, but that's how people described it back then because I think it really took them by surprise because there wasn't many doing anything like that here
No,
when you started doing it.
and I think everybody noticed the black.
Yeah.
This was even when I was an apprentice and I was doing realism. The, Everybody was talking about that it was kind of a joke when customers came in that they're like, yeah, people say you're pretty good, but I have to
Like
tell
buff
you,
guy in the
usually that's
corner, he
black.
does black shit. Like
Yeah. So they all like toned down on the black, and I'm like, I really liked, and I think it was because it came from all like classical with charcoal. So I love this
yeah.
like rough charcoal look, this high contrast, and also a lot of the movies I love was like the old Frankenstein was like high contrast,
Yeah. I was
and
about to
that's
say, like, both the cinematography back then was very high contrast, but it's also the whole idea of this scare. I mean, I'm not a horror guy, so I'm very much grabbing this from a theoretical perspective, but it's also the whole thing of like evil lurking in the dark and the unknown and stuff like that. So the dark, like the way you use very dark spaces in your art form, and we can bit into it a bit more in a bit actually, that very much lends itself to the horror aspect, I would say,
yeah,
because I mean, weirdly, I mean, if you can even imagine it, and I'm always horrible to challenge an artist in this way, I know, but imagine if you did it the other way around. It was very light spaces, but the same imagery. It would quickly become something completely different, I would imagine.
totally. Yeah, and it was so it was fun. It's actually with my realism. A lot of them actually, even though it wasn't horror, people were like, "Oh, it looks so dark and gothic," and I was like, "I just did a portrait." But because I use so much black, because I really like these black spaces. I really like kind of like the old movies, the black and white movies. I love there was so much just
Yeah.
dark,
It
and
does contrast can do a lot in an art piece, especially in tattoos. Like it can do a lot of heavy lifting for the final like visual aspect of the image, so to speak. Like even I learned that over many years of loving tattoos, and talking to different tattoo artists for academic research and other stuff, and meeting artists, especially from the UK, that were a bit more into like heavy contrast and like dark core like realism work. It's like wow, like because people often the misconception I noticed, and you can tell me as as an artist specializing in this sort of style, if you've seen this as well, was that people thought, oh, isn't the details going to go away if you lose a lot of contrast? Isn't it going to be difficult to tell? But it does exactly the opposite sometimes.
yeah,
Like it heightens the details.
exactly. And the more black you have, the black is harder for the sun to kill.
True as well. Yeah.
So if you use solid black, then if you see that tattoo in 20 years, all the light tones, they'll probably be dead, but the high, like the black will still be there. So it's easier actually for the customer to come in and just like push in the light areas a bit more, and
Yeah.
then it works again.
True.
Yeah,
It becomes a nice sketch for you to follow.
yeah, exactly.
I
So,
mean, almost a
so
walking dead of tattoos in a way, like living dead tattoo.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, so it was kind of what put me into it, and the funny thing is, like, I had a big change in my career because of Corona. Corona, actually, I
Okay.
always say like Corona saved me
Ah.
because for many years I did like my dark horror realism, and I did few
Hmm.
times I did like my freehand horror, but there wasn't that many people wanting it back then.
No.
It was only like the one that, because they were like the true fans, they were like the one that wanted. Suddenly, people invented my logo kind of thing. So I had this like
Yeah.
G logo, and people wanted that logo, and they wanted something that was my design. But it was really few people back then because it wasn't spread out yet. But then Corona came, and I couldn't tattoo, so I could only paint. So I decided, okay, not to get bored and not to lose all the motivation. I went in from 10 o'clock to 6 every day, kind of like I was tattooing. So I didn't say I went in every day, studying every day, but instead of tattooing, I was painting.
Yeah.
And everybody around me, after like a month or two into the corona, like the shutdown, everybody was looking at me like, damn, I never seen you this happy before. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty scary.
You're doing the
And
art style you like, so yeah.
exactly. And everybody was like, and suddenly I said to people, yeah, it's pretty scary that I can't tattoo and I'm actually feeling so fucking happy. So I didn't know what I was about to do. And also, I was like rethinking everybody because when I got into art, it wasn't because I wanted to be a tattoo artist. a lot
Yeah.
of the time, actually, I was like, yeah, I don't want to be a tattoo artist because I don't feel that I fit into the whole tattoo scene. I wanted to
Yeah.
be a painter. I want to do art, like art paintings. But I wasn't. In the beginning, it was animation, and then it was art. But the tattoo scene, I never really felt I wanted it. So when Corona came and I felt happy again, then I was like, maybe I just need to quit this. Maybe I always had this dream about going to Italy to study at an art school there. Maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
But then we opened again, and of course I had some customers in my calendar, so I had to do it. And then when I started doing, I realized, damn, when I'm doing my freehand stuff, like the customers that want my style,
Yeah.
I can feel the change. Then I have that
Yeah.
feeling where I feel happy, and the other one is where I'm like, it's work.
Yeah.
So
And you
in the
get
end
to,
of
I mean, it seems to be clear from psychological perspective that when you get to explore this art style, you feel more connected with and resonates more with your clients. Of course, it feels much more like you're creating something together. Where if you're just doing designs like portraits and realism, but it's just like they come in with a picture and you draw it up, yeah, of course, with some contrast, but there's not much to explore for an artist like you in that.
yeah,
You're just
exactly.
copying the image. And that of course becomes more repetitive, more tedious, more monotone. I mean, it can still be meaningful for the client, especially, but it becomes more like, of course, it takes some artistic talent, but it just is more repetitive, more drawing by numbers to prove very. I mean, that's a very very simple-minded explanation of it, but I think you're following what I'm saying. That what you're doing
Exactly.
with the freehand stuff, you're doing way more. It's way more free and artistic for you. Way more exploring themes you find enjoyable.
And I work in a totally different way. With realism, I had a stencil, put that on, and I was like, felt I was coloring by numbers. Of course, I did some changes, but I didn't feel it
Yeah,
was that much me. But when I was doing my freehand, I always do this thing where, because I studied autonomy when I was at the art schools, so I always take like a yellow marker and I sketch in people's muscles. And then when I sketch in their muscles and I make them like move around, so then I'm like, yeah, stretch your arm like this and move. And then I'm like, oh, I see a shape here when they move like this. So I kind of went back to the whole tribal scene. Like, how would you create a tribal? You'll make a tribal so it
yeah, yeah,
follows the muscles and movement. So I would kind of sketch in that with the yellow marker, and then I would look at the yellow marker and like, oh, what does this look like? Kind of like looking at the clouds as a kid and seeing like, oh, I see a face there, I see this. So
I
often
mean,
with some,
I mean, fittingly for a Halloween episode, way creepier than seeing animals and clouds, seeing skulls inside of somebody's arm, but incredible work nonetheless.
I actually did as a kid. Every time I looked at things, I would always see the creepy stuff, and all the others were like creeped out because I saw like dead people
I
from
mean,
a tree, like the
let it
branches.
never be said you're not a goth to the bone, Anders. Let it
Thank
never
you,
be
thank
said you're not
you.
absolutely committed to the darkness, so to speak.
I take honor in that.
But I do think we've been talking a lot about it right now, but I think it might be helpful for the audience. How would you describe your style actually? Because if I were to give it a go first, as the guy who's just watched it and not the one creating it, I would say it's sort of like freehand eldritch horror, like on the skin. Like I at least see a lot of inspiration from like the eldritch horror scene with like mystical skulls, tentacle like shapes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Not actual tentacles, I don't recall, but at least a lot of like swirling shapes and stuff like that that is reminiscent of it to some extent.
exactly. I think it became a mix, and
Yeah,
when I look at some of my favorite artists, they're kind of like in different fields.
yeah,
If we talk about like painters, if we just take the field of painters, one of my favorite painters are Jeremy Mann, and I was so lucky to paint with him many years ago. And he's like doing
yeah,
abstract, really abstract shapes, abstract, and I love it. And then when I grew up as a kid, one of my first artists that I really got into and reading books about was Salvador Dali, and he's making
mm,
surrealism.
yeah,
But then later on in the field, when I started to do horror every day as a tattoo artist, it was more Beksinski, Giger, and Lovecraft. So I think
mm,
I kind of emerged these. I take the surrealism. So if you see my shapes,
yeah,
my skull's like twisted and moving, and
yeah,
a skull is growing out of the eye of the skull, and there's like a sometimes you see
yeah,
a nose of the skull, you see a little face in there, like a human screaming inside it. So that was the surreal part, and then I have
yeah,
the all the creepiness and organic shapes from Giger and the tentacles from Lovecraft and all the textures from Beksinski. but then my connection, and also in my paintings, the connection of it is more abstract. So I think it's like a combine of these like three different art forms: surrealism, abstract, and then all the just gory horror artists out there.
I mean, it does hit a lot of the big names in the horror scene for the true like hardcore lovers, at least from where I'm sitting. I mean, I'm a horror novice. I don't do much horror, but even I, know about some of the greats like Lovecraft and Giger and some of
Mm.
that. And it's just, I mean, it very much hits home. Even as a person that's not into horror, I truly get why horror fans would like the kind of tattoos you do. Because, sometimes I think if you ask a normie, so to speak, a non-tattoo person or somebody with not that many tattoos or who's not perhaps that into horror, I think a lot of them, even some of them might, yeah, but a lot of them would immediately think, oh, they're probably going to get a character from a horror movie. They're going to get a portrait of the alien, or they're going to get Frankenstein's monster. And a lot of people do that, and they're awesome tattoos too. But there's something about these abstract, unique horror tattoos you do that I get why they speak to horror fans a lot.
Uh,
Like,
Thank you. And I was kind of surprised because I remember when I was starting, everybody was saying like, yeah, you can never live from it. And back to where I said that I had the whole Corona thing, then I decided I'm gonna quit
yeah,
tattooing. But then when I got into the like seeing, okay, I love doing this. I remember I opened my calendar in the end, like I closed my calendar, and then every year I open it. And when I opened my calendar for the year after, I wrote on Instagram and on Facebook like from next year it's gonna be darker than ever. I made it like horror movie, like kind of reminds me of the Frankenstein. It was like the whole intro was like
right,
my face burning. It was like it's alive, and then I was like, from next year it's gonna be darker than ever. And then I told everybody, no realism, no nothing. It's only gonna be my freehand horror. And everybody was telling me like, okay, but you know that you're probably not gonna get that many customers. I'm like, I'll see because this is where I want to go.
yeah, yeah.
In 1 week, my whole year after was booked. So I have even more. So this like
Wow.
1 week, and everybody wanted this kind of style because they're like, okay, you want to specialize. I want this. So
I
then I
think
realized, okay, there's a lot of people audience for it actually.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I
So
think it also touches on people that, even if we ignore the horror aspect for just a moment, people that are really into tattooing nowadays, and some people that are perhaps just dipping a toe in or just getting a few tattoos might not get it the same way you and I might, or some collectors might, but they also love committing harder than ever these days.
hmm,
And there's a great deal of commitment in getting a piece that's so dark and so out there and so, I mean, it's a process getting a piece that detailed and all that stuff, and there's a commitment in that way as well. And it's also, you'll get this as well, I know from having spoken with you in person as well and some of that, but there's a density to it as well in the way it looks, which also requires wanting to commit that way to the look. And I
yeah,
think it speaks to people that way too, not just in the horror aspect, but that they also enjoy this fact. They like that it looks almost like they've clothed themselves in something heavy, in a sense.
exactly. Yeah, it becomes different part of them because it's so heavy the way I use it. And a lot of my customers, they always say like, yeah, when I get this, now you have to do the rest because now it feels like I have to have a suit. And I have no idea how many customers I got right now where they want like the full body. So like all like this abstract flow, all my like the whole body created by
Wasn't
me.
there that
So
one client I've seen her on your Instagram, and you and your lovely wife spoke about her as well when I visited you guys in the studio earlier
yeah,
in the summer. Who is she again? But she got a whole suit from you, right?
not yet, not yet,
Not yet,
but
but in the works. She's got a lot of work from you. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah. She got her left arm, and then she got both her legs now. And I think next year or something like that, we're gonna do. It's yeah, it's Nina, and she's like a lovely follower and like supporting so much. So I think she's gonna end up having a lot covered. So I think next year probably gonna do the other arm, hopefully. But let's see.
When you're planning like a continuous journey, so to speak, like that with a client, do you talk a lot about what the symbolism is going to be, or is it just focusing on the style of your doing?
Well, often my customers they send me like 3 images of what they've seen that they really love, and I have so many different stories from people when they come in, and for what can I take for an example? A lot of them have some of them have experienced something in their life they want to express through it.
Mm.
I have one girl, and I actually tattooed her not that long ago, and I'm like, "Can I tell you a story?" And she's like, "Yeah, I want." She's not on social media, so she's like, "Yeah, just talk about it."
Yeah.
And she had a lot of things happening in her childhood. So when she came in, the
Mm.
first thing that happened is like she really wanted to talk to me about what happened in her childhood, in her teen
Mm.
years, and she had like cut wounds and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let's sit down. So we had a cup of coffee, and she actually did these like she wasn't a drawer or anything, but she did like these really like creepy sketches of some demons.
Wow.
And she was like, it was like just a line, just like a line where you could see a lot of eyes. And she's like, I want you to create your art, but maybe inspired from this, because this was like my demons fighting back from what people
Mm.
did to me when I was a kid. So we're kind of like using it. And as my wife said, that it was so funny to see her through the process, because she was this girl that came in with anxiety and a bit shy.
Mm.
But now when you see her in the front of the mirror, she's kind of like showing her arms, and she's like almost dancing, and you can see her empowerment, taking empowerment over her
Oh,
own
nice.
body. And just that journey is amazing to see. And it's the same with Nina, where we told her a
Yeah.
story. She did the same. She's like, yeah, this is taking uh, ownership over my own body and showing who I am. And I think these journeys are really amazing to follow.
Yeah.
I
I
think,
mean, I've spoken about this as well in this
yeah,
podcast before, as a sociologist, especially that tattoos can indeed help people regain a sense of self, and I think that's one of the misconceptions as well about horror tattooing or darker tattooing, or more scary in quotation marks, heavy quotation marks, tattoos. That people often think that it's anchoring the pain, but that's actually
mm,
quite the opposite. Often, at least from what you've been telling me, both when I met you and your wife in person, and what I can hear right now, what I've learned from many other tattoo artists I've spoken to and collectors, it's rather working through the pain, even with horror tattoos and stuff like that. That they're taking what's scary and also both reclaiming a sense of self through the imagery getting put on the body, but also taking ownership of what they feared in a sense.
exactly. And I think all of us, we have all the emotions in us. We have
Yeah.
happiness, and we have sadness, and we have all these emotions. And I think for some people, they try so much to hide these, like the anger and the horror,
Yeah.
that it shows in different kind of ways.
Yeah.
And with my kind of customers, they kind of remind me of the metal scene, because most of my customers
Yeah.
are fucking listen to metal. So that's I think that's 95 or even 99% of my
I mean,
customers.
that I would imagine just, I mean, even just being where we are in the world, Scandinavia, anybody's going to be into some level of rock music. The metal scene is also very prevalent. Like, yeah,
Exactly. And these people are just the nicest people. So if you go to a metal show, you see them like they can look fucking scary, but they're like the sweetest people ever, because
yeah.
they don't hide these emotions. They show them. So they and then they mosh around in a mosh pit and push each other. So they don't need to be
Well,
aggressive
there's
in
an
other way of their
important
life.
difference there. I have to say, just to say, I know this is a digression, but as a man who's lived in the UK and know a lot of Americans, we mosh differently from the UK and the American crowds. We don't actually fight in a mosh pit in
No,
Scandinavia. We basically, the most violent it gets is somebody will grab you and throw you. That's it. But
exactly.
never very, never like to hurt you, not like throwing you to the ground. It's like into another person maybe or something like that. And if somebody falls over, we usually help them up. Like, it's not
Exactly.
like when I went to my first ever metal nightclub in the UK at the tender age of 20 back many years ago, and I got punched in the back of the head 3 times, and I got told that's just part of moshing here. And I was like, no, it's fucking not. I come from a place where I'm not the tallest guy there ever, and I'm 6 foot tall, yet I've never been punched in the head in a mosh pit. That says something about how you mush. But it's a pet peeve of mine. I had to mention it. That what Alice is talking about may sound very cute to non-Danes or non-Scandinavians, but that's how we mush here. It's all just a big like huddle almost.
It's a weird hawk dance we do in front of the scene while people
Yeah,
are screaming on
exactly.
stage. Yeah, and so I think that this is a lot of these horror fans or metal fans. They get it out through their emotions out in this kind of way, so they don't have to do it another way of their life. So I think most of my customers are like the most happy, nice people. if I show people my Instagram, people would get so shocked that how many messages I got from these nice people. Like now we had a kid now, and with that baby kid, we see every fucking day we see like all these cute, nice metalheads and dark artists writing like, "Oh, I love your kid. She's so sweet. She's so cute, and what a cutie." And this is like people that look like this, and so they're like the softest people ever.
Well, I think
Um,
that's not a misconception, as not even just with like really dark horror tattoos like you do, but also just any kind of like horror imagery and tattooing. That people often, I think, sadly stigmatize people that have that type of tattoos in that within that spectrum to be like, oh, they're gonna be scary, or they're gonna be not great with kids, or they're gonna be mean, or they're gonna be. You know what? Most people you've met that have that type of tattoos, if they're mean to you, you probably said something along those lines that you think they're gonna be scary. Like
yeah.
they, I think it's a great big misconception. I mean, even just looking at yourself. I mean, I've met you several times, as I've said. To somebody that doesn't get it, you would look scary as fuck to some people that just think in old school backwards ways. But you're one of the most pacifist, down to earth, calm guys I've ever met. I seem fucking rowdy next to you.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of the studios I've been at before I opened my own studio, it was like the most hurt thing was people saying to the other people in the shop, it's like, he's actually pretty nice. And they were like, yeah, why shouldn't he be? But I think some people just looked at me like, oh, he looks angry as
Yeah.
fuck. And also, I kind of display it on social media. Uh, every time I have a photographer or anything take photos in here, I'm all like, don't fucking show a picture where I'm smiling. Because it's kind of like selling a black metal album with people smiling. It's not selling the fucking product. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's the goth secret that almost gets out every Halloween because it's that time of year and goths start to not be able to not smile. But that's the secret. Like, you don't show the smile to the normies, you just keep it in.
exactly. Hide it. Hide the happiness.
Standing there with, like,
Yeah, that's why I see some of the black metal. They draw a line here just to look, so you can't see the smile.
that's what you say. That's probably why it just looks angry even when they smile. But that's the thing, like I sadly think a lot of people knowing you have a kid now, the first thought that pops into their head is probably like, oh, what's that kid gonna think? But that's the thing, especially as I will hammer home every time I hear something like that as a sociologist. Kids don't hate or are scared of tattoos jumping out the womb.
No,
That's something we teach them, even sometimes passively by our own prejudice towards people with tattoos, or towards people who love horror, or towards people who are goth or emo or alternative and stuff like that. And that's where they learn it from. They don't come out the fucking womb feeling
no.
like, shit, daddy's blackout sleep.
Yeah, I come from where I come from. I'm from a huge family. We have so many kids
Yeah,
in this family. Like we're kind of like rats. There's so many kids over there,
this is fun.
and
What a way to describe your family, Max.
it is. And but all of the kids, they're like, since I was a kid, they're always like
Yeah.
being on my shoulder, crawling around on me. So I've never seen any of these kids like taking a distance from me. It's kind of opposite. I think their kind of thing is more interesting. And every time I'm sitting with their kids, they're like, all my tattoos, they want to study it. And even with our daughter now, I think her favorite thing is when I'm holding her, it's like studying the tattoos because she's only 5 weeks, so she can see contrast. So
Yeah.
so for her, everything is interesting on my body right now because there's like
I mean, it must be
high
because it's
contrast.
what you can see. It's just like, shit, what's this?
Yeah. So
Like Jack Skellington in Nightmare Before Christmas. She's almost going to burst into that very famous song we can't sing on a podcast. But I mean, that's very. I couldn't agree more. Like, kids are more likely than anything, even with horror tattoos or dark core tattoos like yours and stuff like that. They're going to be curious about it more than anything. This is like,
yeah,
what is this? What has this person done here? Why is the skin like that? And that's okay, that's not gonna be anything other than cute, to be honest. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not even a guy who's massive on kids, but even I will soften up if a kid's just like, damn, what is up with your arms? Like,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think I don't think kids are that reacting that much to it. I think it's just they see it just as colors and tones, and I think they see it more interesting. Like
I think
when we
that's
fucking like when we grew up, all the cartoons
yeah.
back then was kind of scary as fuck when you look at what's now. So and
Yeah, I mean, I remember being scared by certain cartoons when we were younger. I think one was called Nemo's Adventure in Neverland or something like that in English. Like, I remember some of the villains in that scared the shit out of me as a kid. Like,
yeah, and they were interesting. Like I loved it because back then it was really interesting that they showed all these characters, and you're probably not going to be shocked, but I was also always interested in the creepy characters.
yeah.
I remember
I
watching
think there's
Lion
a
King, and I
truth to
love
what you said
Scar.
there between the lines.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But there's an interesting and very truthful thing to what you're saying there between the lines. I think we are too preoccupied something with what might scare kids.
mm.
And but we never consider why is that wrong that a kid can be scared by something on TV sometimes.
Yeah,
Like
and
it, shit, man.
it's
Growing up,
not.
most
Yeah.
people, I'm the weird one not liking horror. Most people you meet, especially among young people, are like, "Shit, man, it's Halloween. Let's put on a scary movie and be scared together." And I'm like, "No, I'm good." Like, but that's the thing. They seek it out later on as well, and I don't think you can stop it by censoring it or being like, "Oh, you people with the scary tattoos, cover that shit up near kindergarten." Like, what?
And I think it's healthy. I truly do believe it's healthy. And I was getting a lot into why do we like horror? Why do we like horror
Yeah,
movies and all of this? And I go to a lot of lectures about like serial killers and all of this because I think this is a really interesting topic.
yeah,
And I remember one psychologist put it that her idea was that kind of like if you see animals, if one of the animals
yeah,
dies, the other like there's like a few ones that goes over and sniff and finds out why did this one die, and
yeah,
this is so the other one can survive. And I think we
yeah,
as human beings do the same. There'll always be some that are scared and holding back, and then there's the one like saying like, oh, why is this scary? Why did the person
yeah.
die? And I think that's why the whole interesting in serial killer started. Like the psychologist put it, like this is a way for people for the survival instinct. They want to know what kind of person does this, what kind of person kills another person, and what do I have to do to survive? And I think that for a lot of people, that's where what is it called the interest for the macabre
The
and horror
allure of
starts.
horror.
Yeah, it's like a survival instinct. When I listen to my
Mm.
customers, I think again, most of my customers they like true crime, serial killers, all of this because they're into it. Because not because they want to be a fucking serial killer, but because they. But I don't know, maybe. But a lot of them is because they want to figure out what is wrong with this person and how do I survive these kind of people. So I think,
A certain level of fascination about the most, what can you say, fringe-like personalities among people. And I sort of get the morbid curiosity there with serial
yeah,
killers, learning about why, how could they do that? What pushed them to throw away whatever morals they might have had in that regard
yeah,
and commit these crimes, you know? And it's the same thing with horror. I think, I mean, my own personal take on why people are so interested in horror is basically also just a morbid curiosity of a thing, because we told all life to avoid was scary. But then you just, like with most things, you also gain a certain level of curiosity being told, hey, that's scary, don't do that, you
mm,
know? And for some
yeah,
people, that they'll also create an allure for them where they're like, well, that's interesting. Why is it scary? And then they figure out that, oh shit, that's actually quite creative, or this is a weird way of telling a story, or all the stuff and a fascination with all sorts of stuff, the unknown and stuff like that, you know?
yeah. And sometimes we need to embrace what we're scared of.
Yeah,
It's kind
that's
of like
right.
me as a kid walking towards that forest. It's like
I'll
embracing
never
what
forget
I'm
that as long
scared
as
of.
I live, that you walked out to the forest and tested your own fears as a child.
The most fucked up thing was that I was like starting to have movie nights with the other kids, and then I kind of remember forcing the other kids. And we were like 8 years old, and we're like, "Yeah, we have to do this." So I put on like the creepiest horror movie. Often had this episode with X Files with a doll called Annabelle, and she kills people.
Jesus fuck.
Yeah, and I was like, always put that on, and then I'm like, looked at the other kids. I'm like, so now we go to the forest, and like I remember some of them were scared as fuck, and I loved it because the other ones were so scared, and I'm like, yeah,
And that's Jutland in the 90s probably. So that would have been dark, dark. Like that would have been pitch black night. There's no lights anywhere near that if it's in
no, 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 no,
Jutland
no.
back then.
Yeah, it
You're
was
lucky to
amazing.
find your way home on your own, man.
Yeah, it was good. Probably some of these kids have been traumatized now, but
It's no
I hope
wonder you're
they'll.
so into darkness. You've lived in it. Like you are like a very much creepier but more real version of Bane from that Batman movie.
Yeah, I think so. And the funny thing is that I'm also born light sensitive, so that's even better. That makes it even more goth. When I was a kid,
Yeah, you're
everybody.
literally sensitive to too much light. That is.
Yeah, so I remember going to the doctors a lot of times because they thought I had problems with my tear canals because they didn't produce
Yeah,
enough tears. And then they found out that I was also light sensitive. So,
that is the
so
ultimate goth card. I mean, even more so than your dark tattoo style, your whole dress code and everything. That is the ultimate goth card to pull out in a goth contest. And you went like to Voodoo Lounge in Copenhagen. I mean, Luke's in Copenhagen, some other metal place like that. Just be like, well, yeah, but are you light sensitive? Like, are you
yeah,
actually medically not great with light?
yeah. So I actually got more light in now because my wife, she's the totally opposite. So she loves the light.
Oh
So in our
shit!
apartment now, we have a few windows where light can come in. But every place I lived since I was a kid, like even as a kid, I had
Yeah,
one window this big, and I covered it with a
yeah,
pillow. So in all my years when I lived there in the basement, I never had light in my room. And when I moved to my apartments, was I always like the first thing was to put on like a yeah, a curtain that would hide the whole light, block everything.
yeah.
So I think now when me and my wife moved together, it was the first time in 25 years that I actually have light into where I live. Well, see, I always like had it dark because I felt more comfortable with it.
Even though your wife Lynn is also a metalhead, and even the social media for Copenhagen, massive metal festival, world renowned, and all that stuff, she very much gives off the opposite vibe to you when you come in. Like that is a cookies and cream, here's a hot chocolate kind of vibe when you meet her. She's a very lovely person. I mean, you both are absolutely lovely, friendly people, but Lynn like radiates it from a distance.
Yeah, we're I think we're a good match there because she
Absolutely.
hates the winter because already now she's beginning to feel like it's like dark and gloomy, and I'm more happy than ever because I hate the
Yeah,
summertime.
same, same, same.
But she loves the summertime. So we can kind of like because I hate the summer, she loves it. So we're like good at like yeah making each other in a better
But
mood in the
but
times we hate the
she's also
most.
a good example of one thing that I think is quite interesting because a lot of people, I mean, I've met more people as tattooed as you, or at least as me, that are less into horror than people that look like Lynn. Like people that look like Lynn are often the real horror freaks. Like they're really mad about it, and she seems to be quite into horror as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I think she's getting more into it, but I
Yeah,
think it's sometimes I think it's more for my for my sake. But
for your sake.
yeah, but I'm teaching her. Like I took her to the Beksinski Museum and showing her the art. I think she's starting to embrace it, and I know she's like my biggest supporter. So yeah, so
Oh, she
everything I
is. I
do,
mean,
she's like the biggest
that was
supportive
very
force.
clear meeting you guys in the studio. Lovely studio, by the way.
Thank
That
you.
she's big supporter of your art, and she
Yeah,
absolutely genuinely like it's not because you're her husband. She genuinely loves your art, even though she might not have been that into horror beforehand. She really likes the skulls you do and all that stuff. But I mean,
yeah,
I
she's
even oh sorry, mate, go
yeah,
on.
she's not into the that much to the horror scene, and she's not really into tattoos.
No,
So she has
but
like one.
that's the most interesting thing when I'm talking to you guys. And like just a scoop for people that want to get an insight into meeting Anders and his lovely wife Lynn. Anders so desperate. I think he would be over the moon if Lynn turned around one day and said, "Let's do a sleep." But she's absolutely not doing it. She has her own good reasons for it. I'm not going to air them. That's her business. But she's told me absolutely fine for people that don't want to get doing tattoos. Not trying to say that, but it is funny with how tattooed Anders is and the heavy, heavy, heavy style you do and the horror and all this stuff. That Lynn is just like, nope.
Yeah, yeah. She got like a small heart this big on her foot that I tattooed on her when we've been together for like 3 months or 2 months.
Yeah,
So yeah, she wanted me to make something on her. So I like okay, I can make a a small tattoo on
I'll
you
full
if you
honest
make
say,
one
like,
on
I'll
me.
do a heart on you. That much is a deal, but I'll do my style. Just make a massive.
It's like the tiniest tattoo I did in the last 10 years, the one she has. So she
Damn.
made a tiny heart on me and I made a tiny one on her, and that's what she got right now. So
Oh,
yeah.
so sweet. But again, that again speaks to the whole thing we were talking about about how sickeningly adorable you are with your wife and stuff like that. And yet you're this goth, big horror like guy that does these dark tattoos, and people would never imagine that. And that's the one of my main goals with this episode as well, is showing this idea that like just because people like horror and like dark tattoos and horror tattoos and stuff like that, the allure of that to them doesn't mean that they're suddenly like, no man, the way we should commit our life is love to each other is through nihilism, and we never say I love you to each other, and we just go around reading Edgar Allan Poe all the time. And it's like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, I embrace the darkness when I'm in my studio and doing my work and all of it,
yeah.
but then in my love life, I'm really happily married and got like the perfect wife and the cutest little kid now. So that's my light, and yeah, it's amazing.
That's the thing, like the people. I mean, again, I'm not a horror fan myself, but I absolutely sympathize with the idea of the misconceptions towards people that are like that. And I've met so many people that love horror tattoos and the dark tattoos and all this stuff. And they're always some of the nicest people. And it's not in the way like you would think, where it's like, oh, I have these, so now I gotta be nice. But they very clearly always were. They just also like horror.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think the same with you. Like, I think if people thought, "Oh, you're just trying to be nice because you gotta contrast your style." That's not it. I would imagine you've always been quite friendly with people and quite kind to people.
Yeah, my dad is like the nicest man ever, and one of the biggest values he had was like being polite. So when we grew up, it was like when we got into it, like even going to a store, we had to say hello to everybody, and we had to look people in the eye and being polite to everybody. And this was
Yeah,
really important for my dad, and I think for me, it's just been a high value for me, and that's also one of the things I fell in love with when I met my wife. It was like, okay, she's genuinely a nice person and nice to everybody, and for me, I think that's one of the things I value most. Is just being respectful and nice to everybody, and
yeah.
yeah, so
But I think people that don't get it conflate horror with antisocial behavior
yeah.
often, you know. And being goth with antisocial. Whereas goth is way more tied to anti-establishment than antisocial. Goths are very social. They always hang in a, I would call it the murder of crows of goths. Rarely do I see a goth totally alone. They're very social. I would
There,
say the
there'll,
goth.
there'll be like a big group hiding in the shadows because they don't see sunlight. We don't want that shit. It's
They're
not
just
good for the
pouring in
skin.
garb, some of them.
Yeah.
No, but my point is more that I think same as with heavily two people can experience in general, especially in more conservative cultures like the one we're from, that there is the same thing doubly so with people that like horror tattoos or like goth or emo or alternative, that people almost inherently expect an antisocial behavior from them.
Yeah.
And that becomes a self-proving prophecy because when you meet people like that with prejudice like that, they don't want to talk to you, of course. Like that's quite self-evident. I don't think you need to be a sociologist to understand that if you meet people with a prejudiced opinion about them and are like, "Oh, you're going to be antisocial," that's exactly what you're going to get from them sometimes because they're like, "Why would I talk to you? You already don't want to talk to me." Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I meet that sometimes. I can see people where they have their opinion of how I am, and they're kind of like, I can feel it. So of course, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna waste my time here. So so of course, it's gonna be a self prophecy for them because they close down to people being different. And
exactly.
again, back to my dad, that were always like really polite. I remember when I was a teenager, I was also like, like I look gothic now, but when I was a teenager, I was rebellious. So my mom even looks at me now and she's like, "Oh, you got so boring when you got old because you don't do anything wild anymore." So back then, I was like wearing like like red nail polish and long girly sleeves, and had like some red dreadlocks in my hair and all of these. I would wear women tops and stuff like that just to be provocative. And I remember my dad, he was always supportive to me because my dad, he was like, yeah, when he was young, he was the one that was alternative because he had like
Mm.
long hair, big beard, all of this.
Yeah.
So, and so my dad,
I mean,
he,
long hair, big beard, just to kill a stereotype out there. Yeah, we know we're Scandinavian, but it does happen. It's not because we're Scandinavian. We just have long hair, big beard sometimes.
yeah. And also he was like wearing the leather because he was driving a motorbike back then. So for him back
Yeah.
then, a lot of people had opinions about how he was.
Yeah.
And I remember so clearly one episode where he actually did a lot of times, but there was like one where I was out partying
Yeah.
and there was this group of people that wanted, of course, when I went to the cities in Jutland, people wanted to beat me up because I looked like I did. And my
Yeah,
dad,
it's the same down here where I live.
and it was like every fucking weekend. And it was like, yeah, you know, when you live outside the city in these small areas, this is a
Yeah.
part of being alive. And I remember one time when my dad picked me up and we were kind of like jumped into the car, me and my friends, and my dad was driving away. And then my dad's like, who was this group of people? And I'm like, yeah, it's some idiots that wanted to beat me up because I look like I do because I have long hair. And my dad, he like pulled the brakes and then he started turning the car around. And like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, if they want to beat you up because you have long hair, then they fucking have to beat me up too. So my dad wanted to drive back and beat these kids up. So we were like, calm down. So my dad has always been really
Yeah.
protective to being different. So my dad always embraced that we're all allowed to look different. So we shouldn't be ashamed or shouldn't be beat up because we want to be different. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I had the same. I wasn't even as alternative as you were in your youth. We were from the same generation, so just about. And even growing up in the slight countryside down south of Copenhagen, where I grew up, that was the same. Like I looked different. I had my long strawberry blonde hair and very skinny dude and all that. So I was just an easy target, and people beat me up for being different and all that. So I was always embraced and never understood why people hate for being different. And I think that's sort of the goal of this podcast as well, trying to educate people, mainly focusing on us tattoo lovers and the freaks we are. Because I'll be the first to say, yeah, we are weird people, but so are all
Mm.
people. We just flash it more. Like,
Yeah, we embrace it more, and I
yeah,
think we do it in the I don't know I would say a lovely kind of way because we kind of do it because we want to show off that it's
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that it's okay to
100%.
be different. So I think the more people that just look like they want to do and embrace their own bodies, embrace their own looks, the more we're going to affect the people in our lives.
Yeah.
Like if every family had one rebellion kid there, they would be affected that okay, it's not scary with somebody with tattoos and looking different. So I think it would be a better if people just like wasn't afraid of doing what they feel like.
Absolutely. I mean, it's also like you said before. It helps people heal, reclaiming a sense of self,
Hmm.
whether through horror tattoos, or any other tattoos, or other body modifications, or just embracing your own style. It all helps feel more like yourself, and that's very healthy, especially for the mental health.
Exact. I was actually I'm opening my calendar soon, so I was like making a different posts about my
Yeah.
tattoos and my style. And when I was writing it, I remember the story that I actually put in this post where I had one customer where his kid came to him, and his kid he asked him like, "Daddy, why are you getting these tattoos?" Because he wanted a sleeve done. And he looked at his kid. He said like, "Yeah, but it's because Daddy he wants to be more complete, like he was supposed to look." And his kid was like, "Ah, that makes sense." And I kind of think it was a nice way of putting it. It was like he was supposed to have it, so now he's just completing himself to get
I
these
mean, I think
sleeves.
I think it's a beautiful analogy to how it often feels when you're very into tattoos. It feels more like you're putting a piece into the puzzle, or you're uncovering something that was always there. Like all these analogies are great for describing the confidence boost you feel from embracing who you feel is your authentic self.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're nearing the end, Anders, and I've been keeping it for quite a while. But I always love to. I mean, it's been quite jovial, to be honest. So this is gonna sound a bit silly, this, but I love to end things on a lighter note and a more silly note often. But sometimes we've been joking around, especially me, been joking around quite a bit throughout this. But I was wondering, is there? to instead talk of something that I think will make you feel quite happy to talk about. What is your proudest moment recently from your work as a tattoo artist?
I, okay, this is kind of weird, but I kind of, when our little baby was born,
Yeah,
uh, I had, seriously, I think, I don't know, 500 more. Yeah, I have no idea how many messages I got from customers through my career that sent me messages. And I even had like flowers sent to me from three of my customers, Nina, Pelle, and Alexander. They sent me like a big bucket of, like a bouquet of flowers to support me. And this feeling that, because a lot of them was writing like, yeah, we love being a part of your dark little family. And just getting that, I was like, okay, this fucking makes me proud that I built this kind of brand where people that are horror fans, they can get together and feel like a part of something.
yeah,
And seeing how these customers feel like a part of my journey, a part of my artwork. And as you maybe seen, I put like every day I'm tattooing, I put up my sketch in the beginning, I put up the tattoo.
yeah,
And I get maybe like 30, 40 messages, like if I don't put up the final result in the end of the day, because they're like, oh, I can't wait to see it. And just this feeling that my followers and my customers are so supportive. And I think I'm really lucky. I think that I see all my customers as some of my best friends now,
yeah.
because there's such. And I think this is my proudest moment. It's like I live doing what I love, and I create my creepy horror style, and my customers are such a big part of my life. And so I think this is one of the proudest moments, just having that.
What a
Yeah,
beautiful, absolute beautiful thing to talk about as well. And I can vividly imagine as well that it's also the fact of doing something you love, but also feeling that people actually care about it. Like
exactly.
not people, not just any random person out there. Who gives a fuck about that? But the people you feel you resonated with through helping them with their own tattoo journey, so to speak. And then they care enough to keep contact, to keep in touch, to message you about and all that. And people that enjoy the same stuff you do in the horror space, caring about the art you do, that must feel incredible.
It feels so amazing, because I feel for me now it's been more, this whole studio and all my customers feels like like a small family. And every time I go to work, I'm like, even Lynn, she's here right now in the back room actually. So she's joining me almost every day for work. And me and Lynn is like, oh, now we got that customer on. Oh, now we got Nikolai for tomorrow, and we're like happy to see him because it's been a while. So I think it's like we're going to the studio to do some art and seeing our friends. And
Yeah,
yeah, so that's oh, I'll just, is it okay if I bring Lynn in here?
yeah, of course, man.
Yeah,
Bring
I'll
Lynn
just
up
run
right
in.
now.
Awesome. Sorry, we're back.
Hello, Lynn.
Hi, great to see you.
Congratulations on the little baby as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, now that we have the whole family here, we
Yes.
might as well use it. Because, Lynn, I'm curious now, because as Anders revealed, you weren't the biggest horror fan before meeting him. What is your current favorite horror movie here in spooky season?
My current favorite horror movie. That's a really good question. I think probably Saw is the best.
What about the Danish one we saw not too long ago? What is it? Speak No Evil. Remember that?
No.
Speak No Evil, the one with the kids and the tongue, what they go to.
Oh, that one
Yeah.
was horrible. Yeah, see, I already forgot all about it. It was horrible. I spent like most of the movie just like hiding behind a pillow. It was horrible. I'm not good with horror movies. Yeah, nope.
Well, I don't like horror movies much either, but what a great note to still round off on now with the whole family here, Anders. Could you please tell the audience more likely? First of all, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on to finally get a Halloween episode on the podcast and talk a bit more about a fairly not talked about part of tattooing, the horror scene in tattooing. But Anders, where can people find more about you if they want to get a tattoo or if they just want to see your artwork or anything really?
There's a lot of places. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course our homepage,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. But I think Instagram is the most active one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm tattooing a lot of the days, and when I'm done tattooing, then I'm sitting with her and my phone and trying to. So it's a bit slow making the post. So I'm trying to do everything, but yeah, I think Instagram is the most active one. But I think people can catch us on almost all social medias at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, of course, it's going to be slow. You just had a kid, and I mean, that should be a time to slow down and enjoy this time in your life and your family and everything. But it's great to know you're not stopped for all your fans, for all the many
No,
friendships
not at
you've made,
all.
and all that.
And for the ones interested, I'll be opening my calendar for 26 here on 1st of November. So
Nice.
I'm open for the whole 2026 calendar. So for everybody interested in getting tattoos, the 1st of November is it if they want to get tattooed next year.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for being on here. And to anybody watching or listening, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Hello, everybody. We finally did it after 2 years, a genuine Halloween episode. Of course, not a Halloween episode all about the scares and stuff like that, though we did get into some spooky stuff, especially regarding Anders's past and childhood, but mainly focusing on some of the misconceptions towards horror and dark art tattoos and how they can actually, just as much as many other tattoos, be part of healing and reclamation and part of people's identity in a positive way. And I thank you all for enjoying this episode, hopefully. And hopefully we get another great Halloween episode next year. Even if I have to bring Anders back, he seemed very keen afterwards, at least. And next time we're diving into the second installment of our newly started sub-series, Reclaiming the Self, where I have the lovely April on, and we're going to talk about a bit more of a sensitive topic, but hopefully you will agree when you see it that it was done in a very tasteful way. At least April herself was very happy with how it was done. But we're going to be talking about healing post sexual assault trauma and stuff like that, and trauma in general through tattoos. So yeah, look forward to that one. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.